Well, it's back at the Go Kart project again. Hopefully I'll get out metal detecting soon and put another video up. So I'm going to do a little bit of welding, get this thing boxed in and braced, and then I'll go from there. Okay, well, there it is, boxed in. I ended up using another piece of the motorcycle bar to weld that to that, give strength in there so I'm not relying on just the jack shaft to hold this thing together. I thought about doing an X in here. I don't think I really need to at all. I mean, I've got the support off the frame here up on both sides now. And I went ahead and radiused this corner and this corner here I radiused. I'm going to have support going from about this point up to this bar, and I may end up bringing one from here back to this side also. I'm not sure if I'll end up being able to do that or if I have to run it from here down to this cross tube. Anyways, I'm gonna pause it. I gotta get this thing all sanded, get the bearings off both sides, probably pull the caliper, and then get the paint taken care of. Not sure if I'm gonna be able to match that blue, but I'm not ready to repaint the whole thing yet. I want to get it all running, mocked up, run it for a little bit, and then maybe I'll pull it down and have it repowder coated. But there it sits, the bracket to hold the jet ski motor. Alright. Okay, well, there it is in blue. I did the primer and then I shot it with blue. Actually, before I did anything, I shot it with Hammerite. If you don't know what Hammerite is, you can actually spray it right over rust. I wire wheeled the heck out of it, sanded a bunch down, and then I Hammerited it. I put it in primer. It was a sandable primer. Took out some of the marks and just the gouges, the gashes, the divots. So next order of business, I still have one last coat to paint on that. And it's about the closest I could get to the blue. I don't know if you can see the blue over here and that blue. But if it turns out and I like that color, I may strip the whole frame, paint the whole thing that blue since it started out as blue. Anyways, next order of business is I got to deal with water flow. So this is the original water pump off the 125 two-stroke. It spun off of a wheel that was on the axle, and the wheel looks like this. This mounted to the axle. As the axle spun, it spun the water pump. Don't really want to go that direction because I want to have water flow even when I'm not moving. So my thought is I have this window crank from a BMW. I ordered it for a guy, he paid for it, then he traded the car in. So I'm going to see if I can adapt this directly to the end of this. If I have to, I'll go to this on this motor. Hopefully it's strong enough to spin it. So I have taken the motor apart. I cut this part off of here. Now I've got to just get this down a little bit more. Get it bolted back up there. See if these two shafts are mateable. If not, I'll have to set them side by side like this and run them with the band that goes from these grooves to that grooves. Okay, so of course I came across a problem. Let me show you what happens. This motor with this housing sitting in here, this little nubbin down here, yeah, that little nubbin right there. This shaft sits far enough in there that this touching there would stop this from moving in and out. So once I got this all ground down to where I can use just this, the screws to hold this piece and this piece together and retain the oil-light bushing that's in here, I would get this a lot of movement in and out here. It may not make a difference, but I don't want to wait until there's a problem to fix it, because then I'd probably have to buy a different motor or something. So what I ended up doing is building a thrust washer, or a sleeve I should say. Try to pull this out, pull the parts or the bushings out, or the brushes. I took a piece of copper piping from an old air conditioning unit I disassembled and saved the copper on, and I made this thrust sleeve. So now the area where the armature's at on the shaft, it will hold against that and against the bushing in here. I got that the right way? Yep, I got it the right way. to where when this is bolted down, I don't have it bolted now, but I have just the slightest amount of movement in there. Now it's time to find out if this is actually going to work or not. Okay, so I was building this coupler right here to connect the shaft here to shaft here, and I needed to get the diameter off this, so I went ahead and pulled off this here little I don't know, pulley wheel, whatever you want to call it. It's a band that goes around this to the other one, and lo and behold, I think I came across a problem. You see the problem? Man, that's out of focus. Well, let me show you the problem. That would be a problem. Definitely a problem. So I bagged that idea because I'm not going to spend the money on another one of these racing kart pumps, and I went with, well, I had one in the attic for quite a while. Yep, that there is a Cheap Tools Harbor Freight water pump. Didn't really want to put a Harbor Freight component on here, but you do what you do when you got to do it. So I took a sticker off the back of the seat that was right here, and now it says J-Power Racing Engine. Yep, that there's a racing water pump. Yep, fix that problem. On to the next. Well, there is the problem fixed in the end. I went down searching for T's that went from 1/2 inch to 3/8 because I have 2 spots on the motor for inlet that are 3/8, and here's another one for the 2 spots for the water outlet that'll return to the radiator. But I went and picked up these ends hoping they would thread into the Harbor Freight Cheap Tool water pump, with no luck because it's a smaller end than what this thread, and oh, wow, I can't focus. There it is. There's the threads. So it's smaller than that. So lo and behold, you go digging through your crap and you have stuff to build. So I took ends, or I should say plugs. I drilled the ends out, put some elbows on here in copper, soldered it together, gave this one a slight kick so it didn't run into the back of the seat here. This end will hook to the bottom of the radiator. That'll supply the water flow up and to the cylinder. It'll come up the cylinder. Actually, here we'll show you. So it'll supply water line or water supply to this one, which goes that way to the bottom of the left side cylinder, and to this hose, which is the bottom of the right side cylinder. It'll go up the cylinders out to these outward flows, and that'll go back into the radiator. So I got that figured out. Water flow is figured. I just got to hook up a switch and get the lines ran once I get the motor bolted up. Next order of business is figuring out where I'm going to mount the electrical box for the CDI and the starter relay. Of course, there's one problem after the other. Those T's I showed you that were going to connect these 2 lines together into the 3/4 hose, I ended up having to have them, instead of a 1/2 inch here, 1/2 inch here, I had to take them back and get a half, and then 3/4. I had to do that for both of them. I ended up having to take this piece off because I had a copper one on this side, because I ended up putting the T right on the plug that I drilled out. Then I got lucky and the water pump flow was not turned upside down the proper direction, so I had to turn the water pump over. I got my water line and the radiator all mocked up. I'm just going to put some water in it now and give that a test run. Make sure I've got good flow. I did check the water pump. That thing, it's rated at 250 gallons per minute. I put it in a bucket with a line and it primed itself, and it definitely sprays plenty of water. I just hope that my radiator is a large enough system, hold enough water to run the system. If not, I will end up having to put another radiator on this side and go from there. So I did set the jack shaft back on it, and that's where I'm at. I got all the water lines hooked up and tightened and got water in it, and I just took a battery and set it on the seat. It's a little louder when she has some air bubbles going through it, but it's not bad. And the nice part is sitting on it, I can actually feel that it's running. That motor going, I definitely don't want her overheating. I wanted to make sure I had good water flow, so I disconnected this end right here, plugged the hose, ran another hose out the back just to see what kind of water pressure or water flow I was getting through it. And when I started up the pump, it actually, the water hose stopped about here. It was shooting to the floor, clear back about in here. So I had a good amount of water flow. I'm happy with that. We'll see what she does when it gets started. My challenge this time, or now, is in the electrical box for the jet ski. The plug wires come out the top here, and then in the front here is these little stems that stick out for the starter solenoid. Starter solenoid is pretty nasty, and it was working sometimes at best, so I grabbed myself a new one, got the CDI out, and there's nothing else in there except for the Molex plug that's just inside this hole, and the wires come through this rubber component that seal them all up. I don't know if you can see the holes. There they are. So on the Molex plug, what I have to do is press in the little tab that's inside here, if I can get the focus. Well, there's little tabs on the end of these little probes. I have to press those in, take this off, pull each wire through the end of that rubber, and extract it. And this is how it water seals at the motor. So I've got to find a place for the CDI to mount. I'm thinking, and since I got plug wires that have to reach, obviously, the plugs, I'm going to mount in this area kind of a guard or a splatter shield, whatever you want to call it, that will hold the CDI probably on top of it in about this manner, keeping it out of the way of the chain. And the scatter shield is going to be in case the chain comes loose, because there's going to be 3 chains on this thing, or if for some reason one of these centrifugal clutches come apart. As far as the starter solenoid, I'm thinking about mounting it over on this side because my starter's tucked in underneath. I can't really see it. It's tucked in right behind this bearing over that way. My battery's on this side, so I think I'm going to mount her down in here somewhere. Down in here, not sure, somewhere in this area. I got to build a bracket for it, get wires to reach. So that is my next challenge now that I've got the water system done. And from there, it's pretty much just waiting on the axle and the gear from the machine shop. Okay, I took some of this stainless sheet here and some of this flat star, just mild steel, and cut a piece of each off and bent the mild steel like that where it bolts into the same spot as my pillow block bearings. Gave a slight bend to the stainless and then welded together. Notched it out a little bit for, can you see that? Sort of notched it out a little bit for the exhaust right there underneath that hose clamp. My hope is mounting the CDI, if I can get it to sit sort of like that. Mounting the CDI kind of like that so that my plug wires will reach. Got plenty of length there. I'm trying to figure out a way to mount it with rubber. I'm thinking about welding some bolts, well, I should say drilling some holes in the bottom, welding the bolts on here, make them kind of stubby, take some rubber hose, if I can reach it, take some rubber hose, stick it over the stem of the bolt, cut the hose off at about maybe, ½ inch or so, about like that long, and then jam another bolt in there to where the bolts are not touching, and then mount the CDI that way so that the hose will absorb some of the vibrations with the CDI mounted on there. I didn't mount it both ends yet. I haven't got this end mounted. I'm not sure if I'm going to. Might leave it a little bit flexy to where that'll absorb some of the vibration also. My concern is vibration being so much that it breaks off here. Progress and just thinking. So there we are. For it, what I did is I took a nut like this, put it on a bolt, took a piece of the hose, I cut it down, and then I jammed it. Let's see if I can do this while I'm holding the camera because it's so easy. Jammed it on the rubber, or jammed it into the rubber. Got the nut down there, and it doesn't pull out very easy at all. And then I took another bolt, I cut off the threads, drilled a hole in my plate, stuck them through just a little bit, and welded them on, giving me that. And the end result is this. So I've got a rubbery mount. I can mount the CDI on here. It gives a little bit of isolation from the vibrations. There is the end result. Got a little space between the shield and the CDI. Got the ability for it to be a little bit shock absorbing. I do hope that works. I got the chain guard piece done. I have plug wire ends on the end of the plugs. This here wire needs to go to a ground, chassis ground, but I'll probably run it straight to the negative on the battery. This one is the kill switch, which basically grounds this to, or I should say connects this to a ground. So next time I tackle this, it will be getting the starter solenoid on this thing. And I'm thinking about mounting the starter solenoid, as I mentioned, down in behind the seat. I don't think I want to mount it to the seat. I got enough stuff mounted to the seat. I mean, the radiator, let's look at that battery laying here. The bottom radiator mount is right here, is that shiny thing you can see. Top side mounts to the back axle bearing mount area. I may end up using this bracket because it allows it to mount on the frame with this. I may use this top U-shaped piece, build something to hold the solenoid. So I'm done for the weekend. I'll get this video made, all connected up and posted, and maybe start on it later this week, or I should say later next week, and see if I can get it wrapped up. I did get a phone call from the machine shop. They have my gear done and my axle, so I can pull this long tube out, and that'd be one heck of a wide rear axle. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you at the next portion.